This video is on Kramer, Newman recycling logistics. Back in the 90s on Seinfeld, Kramer and Newman came up with a plan to collect bottles in New York and then transport them to Michigan where they could get an extra 5 cents per bottle. The show showed Newman stressing out over an adding machine, trying to figure out how to make the math work. And then he realized that apparently no math was needed because he was already taking a mail truck to Michigan for mail delivery. So he was comped for everything, the gas, the mail truck, and his time. So any extra bottle or can he could bring, then he would just get paid extra for it. At the beginning of the show, they talked about bottles, but at the end of the show, it showed one of them throwing some bags of what looked like cans out of the back of the mail truck. So don't know which one they were talking about or both, but cans are compressible, and so they'll take up a lot less volume than bottles. If Newman and Kramer knew the conversion equations here, they would have this figured out in just a couple of minutes, and there would be no need to stress out over an adding machine for a long time. Of note, I've read that recycling bottles across state lines is illegal because the people in Michigan have to pay extra every time they buy a bottle. And then if all that money goes to people from out of state that are bringing in bottles for recycling, then that money doesn't go back to the people in Michigan. Also of note, I'm using only 5 cents for my math because they made 5 cents per bottle in New York. So they're only making an additional 5 cents per bottle by taking these bottles all the way to Michigan. So it's only an additional 5 cent profit. So here's the math on this. You learn these conversion equations in chemistry class typically. It's called stoichiometry then, when you're using it to measure the amount of chemicals to go into a reaction. A lot of times I accidentally forget, and I call this stoichiometry even when I'm using these equations for other things. But for other things, it's just called conversion equations, and they're super easy and useful. So from Manhattan to Toledo, Ohio, it sits on the border of Michigan, so it's about as close as you can get. Round trip, 1,140 miles and 17 hours of driving. If you ever just want to use the first part of this conversion equation, whenever you take a trip, it's super helpful. You just take your miles and then take your miles per gallon, 10 miles per gallon for a mail truck. I Googled that. If all you do is this first part right here, this tells you how many gallons you're going to need for that trip. And then if you want to make this even more useful, convert your gallons into money. 1 gallon is $1.25 for 1990s prices. If you stop right here, now you know how much that trip is going to cost you. Let's take it a step further and convert that money to bottles. The dollar signs will cancel, the gallons will cancel, the miles will cancel. You're just left with bottles. So they will need 2,850 bottles for that trip just to pay for the gas. That is if Newman wasn't already being compensated or comped for everything. I just think what's really fun about this is we're able to turn miles into gallons, turn gallons into money, and then turn money into bottles. And you can work these equations backwards as well to convert bottles into miles. So the opportunity cost, if none of this is comped, opportunity cost is the money you would make by doing another job. So any other job that was minimum wage back then at about $6 per hour, right there, at 5 cents per bottle, the dollars will cancel. You're left with bottles per hour. They would have to pick up 120 bottles per hour just to compensate them for the money they're losing by working a minimum wage job during that time. The opportunity cost for the drive, 17 hours at $6 an hour, is going to cost them $102. So if they spent that 17 hours working a minimum wage job, they would have made an extra $100. Next up, just for fun, look at the volume of the bottles. We'll just assume they're using bottles that aren't compressible and no cans. This many bottles, one bottle would be 12 fluid ounces. For an internal volume, if you cap off the top and submerge it, then you can find out the exact external volume, which will be even greater. And then 128 ounces per gallon. Ounces cancel, bottles cancel. We're left with gallons. 267 gallons worth of bottles they are transporting. Divide that by the average 40-gallon water heater in most people's basements, and that is just about 7 water heaters that they have to fit in the back of that mail truck. Back in the 90s, I hadn't had chemistry yet, so all of this stuff was way beyond me, and just like I'm sure this would be beyond any average person. But as you can see, once you learn these conversion equations, you could do something that would otherwise be impossible, and you can do it in just a matter of a couple of minutes. So pretty fun stuff, I think.